Hey everybody, Doug here. Before the new episode starts, I would just like to personally thank everybody who has recently made a financial support to the show through the Buy Me a Coffee app. If you too would like to support the show and our endeavors, you can find a link wherever you found this podcast to buy me a coffee, and I thank you for any future support. Now, enjoy the show. Singing Dutchman Productions. Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends old and new and have honest conversations. Today I welcome to the front porch Marlo Patterson, a former student years and years ago who now I consider a dear friend, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the porch, Marlo.
Hey, Doug.
So, well, that was a short introduction. That's good. So I was really excited to have you on because out of all of my guests so far, and I've had some really great guests, you have a really unique story that I want to share with our audience. But before we get to that story, we got to let these guys know a little bit about you and kind of get to know you. So let's start with you grew up the daughter of an active Marine officer. So, you were this military brat, I guess I've often heard the term. What was that like growing up on well, first off, did you grow up on base or did you guys always live off base? What was that all like?
Yeah, so um, we lived on base up until my fourth grade year. So,
And where was that when you were very young?
yeah, my dad was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. We were living slightly north of that, near Swansboro, like Emerald Isle, Cape Carteret specifically. And so fourth grade was the first year that my family and we lived off base. And you know, it was weird. Like, I remember we were wanting to go to the movie theater, and on base, you know, you can go to the movie theater for free. Like, all you have to do is pay for candy and popcorn. And we went to one of the local theaters there in Jacksonville, and we had to pay, and I was like appalled by this. And then, I mean, that's just like a random detail, but that was also the first time, that we're not surrounded necessarily by other military family children. There
Uh-huh.
were some kids there that um, their parents were also in the military, but the vast majority were locals.
Okay.
And so that had a whole like social dynamic that I wasn't used to up to that point.
And I mean, I didn't grow up with the military family. Did you how long were you in at Camp Lejeune before your dad got shipped somewhere else?
Yeah, so oh goodness. We were that was like sorry. So we
All right, it's
you
okay.
can edit this, right?
Sure.
No, I'm kidding. I we were on base up to that point. So like moving directly from North Carolina, we moved to Pennsylvania. So like that's when um like my parents split, and like I was no longer like living under like military lifestyle anymore. And
Okay.
and so we we were there for like 2 years until we moved up to Pennsylvania. And then right around the time that we moved to PA, my dad got stationed back in Virginia, so Quantico area. Um, and so that fourth and fifth grade year was like first exposure to normal civilian life, if you would. Um, and another random detail was like we were, we would go to the grocery store, but we grew up going to the commissary on base, and like, you would say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go to the commissary." I don't even remember. I just remember distinctly having a conversation with a pal in 5th grade, and I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to the commissary," and she's like, "What's the commissary?" And I was like, like where you go buy groceries, like go get food. So it's just like different terminology.
Sure.
Sorry. So then circling back, the question, like how long?
Yeah, and I mean, as you were a kid, I mean, were you moving around a lot, or was it mainly you were in North
Yeah.
Carolina, and then
Okay.
you eventually made it to Pennsylvania, but,
Mhm.
were there other places in between?
Oh, so for starting out, I was born in Oklahoma, and then my that's where both my parents are from. And when I was, I think, 10 months old, maybe a year, we went to we my dad joined the Marine Corps, and that's when we started the military lifestyle. And the first place he was stationed after basic was in Hawaii. And I remember Merritt. So he was 2 weeks old. My uh,
Younger brother.
yeah, oldest
Yeah.
youngest brother.
Yeah.
And he yeah, he was 2 weeks, and then, so we were there for 3 years, and I remember that a little bit. And then from Hawaii we went to Spain, and we were in Spain for 3.5 years.
Were you old enough when you guys were in Spain that you have memories of living in Europe like that?
Very much so.
Okay.
I was 5, and so my kindergarten through uh, 2nd grade I was there. And actually, during the middle of that, so I went to kindergarten and 1st grade on base, and then my first 2nd grade year, I went to a private school off base, and that was a private Catholic school, with all Spanish kids.
Mhm.
And so that was a whole experience in itself of just feeling like the outsider. And um I mean, not knowing the language and cultural differences, but you don't realize that as a kid.
Sure, sure.
And I had to become very okay with, being alone, because it
Okay.
was lonely,
Mhm.
that one year. But we did have English class once every day. So that was like the English segment was the greatest, because I knew
All of a sudden, you became
going
the
on.
star in class.
Yeah, exactly. I remember there were like older girls coming to me asking me like grammar questions. And I was like, I would never know the answer, obviously.
Sure.
So I'm like, second grade grammar, but
So you got bounced around a lot as a kid, going
I
from,
did.
here to there and here to there. Looking back on it, what are some of the benefits of having grown up or having those foundational years in
Mm.
in flux like that? Or do you look back and say, well, it really it didn't there aren't that many great things about it. I see more negatives than I do positives.
Mm.
Looking back on it now, what can you take away from that?
Gosh, no, there's so much good that came from it, and I wouldn't be me without that experience of being okay with friends, environment, schools, teachers, homes, landscapes changing.
Well, you can't just make a statement like that and then and not defend it. So, um, what about that particularly maybe is such a huge part of who you are today? Is it you have a strong ability to um, adapt quickly to a new place,
Yeah.
or quickly adapt to meeting new people, or what do you think?
I would say both. And I would say it's like it's a blessing and a curse, in the sense that, like, I am so okay and good with moving and having a change of scenery and making friends with like where I am, but also being okay not necessarily having like deep connections also, like with
I was gonna ask that as a follow up. Do you feel what is home to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Doug. Um, gosh, see, and I feel like a lot of kids who've grown up military feel this way of like home really isn't a place. It's where my family is.
So no matter where they are, period.
Right. Right.
That's home.
And I think that's, growing up, your family was like your core, and that was the one constant. Um and so I think having those familial bonds, I'm so grateful for that. And I think as an adult, like I really value my family. And
Sure.
um but I've also seen, like, I've been in this city for 3.5 years, and I start getting antsy, which is just funny because I'm not used to planning routes. And so I think that's also a negative from growing up as a military brat, of like kind of this, I mean, I'm not trying to sound whimsical, but like a gypsy soul of on the go, and
Right.
just go where I feel. And obviously, I'm an adult, and I have responsibilities and obligations, and I can't just pick up and go wherever. But um, I planting roots scares me because
Really? Okay.
trapped.
Oh, that's the it's funny because I'm listening to you tell this story, and for me, that mentality is extremely difficult to wrap my head around because from my
Mm.
background and my personal story, my families on both sides of my tree have 12, 13 generations in the same region
That's
of the United
amazing.
States. And
Yeah.
this sense of, when I think of home, of course it is, to me, I agree with you, it's where my family is, but I also feel some kind of ancestral tie to the
Mm,
land and that region. And that's why for
absolutely.
me personally, it's difficult for me to say that someone can say, well, I don't really have a home, because home is wherever my family is. And I would imagine
Mm.
for you, or maybe I shouldn't imagine this, but when you hear me tell like that side of what home is to me, do you find that to be kind of a foreign concept or something that's difficult to wrap your head around?
Absolutely. But I think it's beautiful, and I think that that has such power, and, like, the fact that you also get to raise your children in that and kind of leave them that legacy, I think that's such a wonderful thing. And, you know, you kind of wonder, well, for me, like, I wonder, what kind of lifestyle do I want for my kids? Because, like, do I want one where they don't feel, um, like, do I want one where they have roots and they're able to be established and have, family constantly around them, not just immediate family, but extended family members, and um or or do I like expose them to having to uproot and be in different social settings where they have to make friends and be with new teachers in a new place, and um kind of explore new cities or towns together as a family. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no, right, right.
Because I think there's such beauty and benefits of both lifestyles.
I agree. I agree. And I'm glad that eventually all of your travels did find yourself in central Pennsylvania so that I had the opportunity to get to know you and have you
Oh
in
my gosh,
class.
me
That
too.
was awesome. And I'm so thankful for that. But the real reason I wanted to have you on as a guest is because of something you did. It's going on 2 years ago now, I think. Um, Marlo went on a trip to, of all places, northern Iraq a
Hmm.
couple of years ago. What
Yes.
year? When was it,
That was
Marlo?
it was actually 1 year ago.
Oh my gosh, only 1 year. COVID
It's been a
COVID
long
really.
year,
Yeah,
Doug. It's
right, 2020 has been a long year.
hard.
So, we have to I want this story to be told, and we wanna make sure that we tell the whole story. So, a little bit of background too. So Marlo, yes, was a former student of mine, and I'm really close with her and her brother, Merritt, who she already referenced. Her, stepfather is a colleague of mine, so I'm in
Mhm.
constant contact with Marlo's family and on a daily basis, or at least her stepfather anyway. And at one point, about a year ago, a year plus ago, I think it was either your brother or your stepdad came to me and said, "Hey, Marlo wants to go to Northern Iraq." Now, this was 2019. We are all familiar with the situation in the Middle East and what it's been like for the last, well, for a long time. And my initial reaction, of course, was like, "What are you? Are you kidding me? Is she nuts?" So let's go back to that time period and tell the listeners a little bit about how this even came about.
Mm, yeah. So, um, there was a lot of, you know, intimate things that kind of played into where I'm going to start, and I go to a church called Queen City Church here in Charlotte, and um, there's a man named Sean Foyt who is associated with Bethel Church up in Redding, California, and there was one Sunday where he came and talked at our church. I actually wasn't there. And but I get so he oversees multiple nonprofits, one of them being like it's a nonprofit called Burn 24/7. And there are like burns all over the world, and they are essentially like worship settings in the sense where if you have a burn, quote unquote, burn furnace, then it's um, musicians and singers and artists. They come and they worship for, I mean, a span from 4 to 24 hours. Well, they there's a mission arm called Light a Candle, and Light a Candle has, different operations in different countries throughout the globe. And what Light a Candle does specifically in northern Iraq, Kurdistan, is they go into refugee camps, and they provide multiple services. They give and donate basic supplies such as, food, baby formula, toiletries, things that are just, we take for granted. And a big thing I remember was flour. Like they couldn't get these refugees flour, and that was like one of the staples that they use to cook with and survive on and just make multiple dishes with. So um he came and spoke at my church. I was not there, but then I guess during that sermon, he shared a video of just like their heart and mission for, because I mean, back during like the height of ISIS, they went and they destroyed towns, they destroyed villages and cities. And um I mean, it left such destruction and so many people homeless, and these people are living in tents, and um it's a very hopeless situation. But uh they offer, I think, like two mission trips a year there to just go into these refugee camps and, like I said, provide food or provide supplies, or um, they're like children's camps to where you can go in and you have these programs that you can basically just have fun with the kids for however many hours, try and help them kind of forget, not forget, but just escape. That's not a better word. Um, but just provide a space and an atmosphere where they can be kids, if that makes sense. And
Sure. Yeah.
um,
So you saw this video and you were
yes,
apparently, moved.
very much
What was
so.
okay? So, all right, you watched a video and you're like, "Oh man, this is something." How do you
Um,
then go from that to I want to do this?
Right. So there was then a group of people from my church who showed interest, and I was at church with two of my best friends, and uh they were like, we're they're like two people from our church were interested in going, and they're like, if you're interested, let's connect. And so from then on, I prayed about it, and I was very moved spiritually, um and I wanted to go. And I really wanted to go too, Doug, because especially with, I think, my generation, or, like, we lived through 9/11, right? And I think ever since then, there has been this incredibly negative stereotype, or uh, just thoughts around, and like confusion, misunderstandings about the Muslim culture in the Middle East. And and I wanted to go and see for myself, kind of like
The
how
average person would
they
say,
treat
I'm gonna I get that. The average person's gonna say, I'm gonna look up Muslim culture on Wikipedia and read about it. Or I'm gonna watch
it.
some videos on YouTube. Uh, it's a whole nother type of person that says, I want to learn about this, and you know what? I want to go there in the middle of
Yeah.
of essentially a war zone and learn about it.
It's,
So you have to explain that to me. How, the average person, I think that
I
don't take this the wrong way, but the
no.
normal sane person would say, I'm going to watch some videos or read a book. I'm not going to get on a plane
I
and fly to Iraq. So talk me through
I
that
think
process.
honestly, it was just like spiritual. I just felt like I needed
Okay.
to go, and I needed to go and see it and feel it
Uh-huh.
and experience it for myself, and like tell their story truly
Okay.
firsthand
How All
from.
right, next step. You've made this decision internally. You've said to yourself, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. How did you go about telling your mother and father that this was something that you were going
Oh,
to do?
yeah. Well, so I remember I was driving home from work, and it had just been so heavy on my heart. Like, it happened on a Sunday, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And and I think it might have been a Tuesday or Wednesday, and I called my mom, and I was like, "Hey, so there are a group of people from my church who are thinking about going on a missions trip." And she's like, "Okay, yeah." I was
Yeah,
like,
because the initial thought's like, oh, Central America or the Haiti.
and um and I was like, "Yeah, it's actually it's in northern Iraq, Mom." And she was like, "Okay." Okay. She played it so cool, and she had, I mean, from what I could tell over the phone, and like from future conversations after that, I mean, she very much so had a piece. So I think that was just the grace of God, like allowing her to be sane, or not even sane, but just not
not
confused.
not exploding at you, and yeah.
Yes. Yes. But I think too, it's kind of so outrageous that it not outrageous,
Yeah, I
so
no, I think that is the
random.
right word. It is outrageous that you probably you aren't able to process it at first. Like, "Oh, yeah, okay, she's going on a missions trip." And it's
Right.
not till later that you're like, "Oh, that's in the middle of a war zone. Okay."
I know. And so with my dad, of course, who has served and been deployed in Iraq, and has knows what it's like. And I mean, I think, so southern Iraq is very different than northern Iraq. So I was in northern Iraq, and there's a lot of Kurdish influence, and so like the Kurds are an ethnic group, and they don't necessarily have, they're like an ethnic group such as, the Jews. The Jews now,
Mhm.
that they have Israel, and that's kind of their city state, or their I guess,
Their
political.
home. Yeah, right. Their political home.
Whereas
Yeah.
the Kurds,
Do
their
not.
ethnic region,
Yeah.
it cuts into Iraq, Turkey, Syria,
Mhm.
I think part of Iran.
Mhm.
So they don't necessarily have like a political border to where they're recognized as a state. And so, but a lot of their influence is in northern Iraq, and southern Iraq is like where Baghdad is, and that's where a lot of the fighting has
Right.
taken place. Just to give some context, and then so anyway, call my dad, and I'm like, hey, Dad, so I want to go on a missions trip. And he's like, okay, and I said, to I want to go to Iraq. It's in Iraq. And he was quiet for a minute. He was like, you know, you couldn't go to Costa Rica or something? Like
Yeah.
and I was like, oh yeah. But again, he was very calm about it too. And I think that he was like, look, like if that's what you feel you have to do. Like he was very supportive as well. He and my mom were very I don't know I don't know why. I don't know if it's the fact cuz I did tell I mean there have been mission trips there before, right? And like this is not the first time that we've gone. It's been very safe, and so you kind of give them the whole spiel. Uh,
Uh-huh.
um, but they neither of them fought me on it, so I was thankful for that. So thankful to have their support because
But did you have friends and other family members who did fight you on it?
not
Or
to
not really?
not to my face. So I don't know what conversations were had that I'm necessarily aware of, but
Well, I can tell you in all honesty that your brother and I had more than one phone call over all this, and we definitely were not in favor.
well, I appreciate you guys keeping it to yourselves then. No,
Well,
I'm
that's
kidding.
because we couldn't agree on which one of us were gonna tell you.
But hey, look, I'm back. I'm safe.
No, right. Oh, wait, yo, we can't jump that far ahead. Okay, so now
Yeah,
everybody knows you're going to Iraq.
I'm
Okay.
going to Iraq.
So you're with this group. I'm sure you had, meetings ahead of time and everything. So walk us through. You
Yes.
get on an airplane here in the United States, and
Yes.
where do you fly to?
So, firstly, I meet there are four, there are four other people that are in the Charlotte airport. So, like, I flew out of Charlotte to JFK, or we had a layover in JFK, and then from JFK to Istanbul, Turkey, and then
Okay.
from Istanbul to Arbil, which is this city in northern Iraq. And so I get to Charlotte, um, Charlotte Gate, and I find my people because two of them go to my church, two of them are from Winston Salem, and so like from the get go, I'm not alone. And then we fly to New York, go through you have to go through the customs and
Right, right.
international. There's like a whole other terminal for
Right,
international,
right, right.
and that's kind of where so that's there are people from Canada and then other parts of the US that meet us there, and we're all on the same gate. And then we once gosh, there was probably I forget how many there were on the trip, maybe 14.
Okay.
And I would say by this point there are at least like 10, 11 of us. You would never You would not believe. Did I tell you there is actually a woman by the name of Sarah Fisher, and she is from like uh I don't want to say Beach Creek area or
Oh
like
my goodness.
from
Central Pennsylvania.
I mean, but she grew up Amish,
Oh, okay.
and so that's a whole other story. But so she and I bonded over Central PA,
Yeah.
and So all that to say, flew to Istanbul, all of us together, and then met up with there was a man from England, and he met us there. And then all as a group, we landed in Erbil, and that's where kind of our leader, our mission leader, met us. And uh, you know, we get off the plane in Erbil. You know, after this, it's like hours and hours of traveling and time
Mhm.
change.
Sure.
Um, you're like dehydrated, and so we get off, and immediately, Doug, it stinks. Like the air, it just smells.
Okay.
And then like we're waiting for our bags to get unloaded. And also this airport looks like it hasn't changed really since like the maybe like 70s.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of raggedy.
Yeah.
And um we get off, and there's like also on the plane, it was like a smaller plane, and there were like a bunch of these big buff guys, and they are like not they're obviously not Middle Eastern. And and like you kind of overhear people talking, and I'm pretty sure they were Russian.
Okay.
And so we're all waiting around for the bags, and you go to the restroom, um and you know it's a hole in the floor. And I think that was really the moment I was like, what, where
Yeah.
am I? What,
Right, right.
what, where, like, why, and how is this okay? Like, are we
Yeah.
gonna be good? Are we gonna be but yeah, so we're waiting for our bags, and I just like something that really stands out at the airport was they have to take your bag and scan it through kind of like this cylinder thing, and
Okay.
kind of walk along with your bag as you're leaving the airport. And um these big buff guys, they're probably 10 of them. And and I hear like the security guard, and there was a broken English, and they're like, they're guns but not loaded, and I'm just thinking like, what? Are these like mercenaries? Like, I can. Where's the plane? Where I need no, but yeah. So it was just funny because it's like a different world.
Oh,
And
sure.
I was very just made aware of that, like
Yeah.
from the get go. And we got into a van, and I mean, at this point too, of course, you're with several people, and like I wasn't afraid, but it was also just like holy cannoli, like.
Yeah.
And we get to the hotel, and it's right down the street from the consulate, like very well lit area, very like highly, like it's in the middle of their city. And Erbil is a fairly westernized city, in the sense, like I think prior to ISIS, there were a lot of like businesses and like things
Mhm.
that's where they would go for opportunities. And so, um, you know, signs would be in English and Arabic.
Okay.
But you like we walked up to the hotel doors, and they have like a, oh my gosh, metal detector that you walk through, and there's also a guy outside, standing with an AK-47, and openly, and you're just okay, like.
Yeah.
So I felt this very safe, practically the whole time, which I'm thankful for.
Sure,
But
of course.
um,
But and eventually you do get to go out, like, out in the countryside, because you told me about visiting a small town, or maybe it was the refugee camp that you eventually made it to. What was that like?
yes, so we went to multiple refugee camps. And so a lot of kind of give some context. There is a city called Mosul, and
Hmm.
Mosul, modern day Nineveh. So what you hear about in, Old Testament Jonah, um, when he went to Nineveh, this is like I'm like cradle of civilization here. That's
Yeah.
equivalent to Mosul, and I think during kind of the height of ISIS, Mosul was considered to be ISIS's capital,
Right.
and um, so a lot of the refugees that we came into contact were from Mosul, um, because when Mosul is west of Erbil, and so when ISIS came up, everybody fled into Kurdistan, and one of the first cities that you hit would be Erbil, and so
But that was your chance to finally interact with
these
children and other
very
people
much
too.
so.
How welcoming were these refugees of
Mm,
you as an outsider?
right. Incredibly, incredibly welcoming. Sorry, it's like you have to emotionally go back there, and I honestly
Huh.
I don't visit these memories a lot just because it does bring up. I mean, I don't know if that's healthy, but there's a lot of, yeah, like emotional ties to it.
I
But
believe that, I'm sure. No one
uh,
can experience, what you experienced and not walk away with some kind of
mhm,
emotional attachment or just something that has changed them.
right.
Tell me one brief story about maybe an interaction with a child or an adult
Yeah.
refugee. And then if
Yes.
you don't feel comfortable, that's okay
Oh my
too.
gosh, no, I would love to. Um, there, goodness. I will tell two stories if that's okay. And I mean
Yeah,
they're
sure.
brief, but there was the first refugee camp that we went to, and it was about 2 hours away, and I think it was um all right, Yazidis. So Yazidi is another tribal group that live in the like in Iraq, and they are not Christian nor are they Muslim. So they have kind of been ostracized over, hundreds of years by both religious
Uh-huh.
groups. And so I don't know how familiar, like when ISIS invaded, they
They targeted anybody that wasn't pro ISIS, of course.
correct. And
Right.
and the Yazidis did not have any form of protection for themselves. So like the Kurds have the Kurdish army called the Peshmerga. And like Iraq has a government, but however, like I there was something missed in the sense that like these Yazidi people were not protected. And I think it was more so around in this area called Mount Sinjar, which is where the majority of them lived. And so when ISIS invaded Mount Sinjar, then like that's when I think hundreds, if not thousands, of like Yazidi women were enslaved, and like children were enslaved. And so they took a lot of people. So they either forced the men into joining their army, women were forced to be sex slaves, and then
Mhm.
children were also enforced to become a part of the army. Um, and so this first refugee camp we went to was for the Yazidi people specifically. And there is this incredible woman who had actually started this school on the refugee camp, and she took in specifically orphans or kids who had been directly captured by ISIS. And so, we're in this school with, however many dozens of children that, 3 years prior had been a part of the ISIS army. And so the amount of, I mean, emotional trauma
Trauma. Yeah.
that they've experienced, that, but it was just, I think she has done so much good for them. Um, and like there, she has recruited other teachers. There's a woman named Saharain, and you know, so like they don't speak English, and obviously I do not speak Arabic, and they, so you have to have an interpreter. So we actually got very close to our interpreters while we're on the trip, because it's like, you're hearing these like very deep and personal and intimate things from this stranger, and it's coming through this interpreter. So there's like also a link, I think, and like a bond that you have, um, for these interpreters. But they, you know, and it's weird because it's delayed. So like, you hear them talking, but you don't know what they're saying, but you know that it has such like weight. And um and so there's this girl named Saharain, and she's speaking to me through an interpreter, and she's telling me like, her father passed away, um at the refugee camp, actually out of dehydration when they first got there 3 years ago. And so it's just her and her mom and like her sister, and then like her brother was forcibly taken by ISIS, and so she doesn't know if he's alive. And like that was 3 years ago. And you're like me, and I have, four brothers, and like it tore me up.
Sure.
And like, and you feel so helpless in that situation too. And it's just like, what can I do? Like
Yeah.
what can I give? Like what, and honestly, I think a lot of times people just want their story to be known. Um and they just want to relate with people, and they want to be seen. And like there's this other teacher there who like kind of was giving part of her story, and like she had been captured by ISIS and like was held prisoner for like 2.5 years. And like her family, fortunately, was able to get enough money to buy her ransom. And it's like things like that where you meet people firsthand,
Yeah.
and you're just like, God. And like for them to also still believe in Jesus after that happens, and to like declare their faith, you're just like blown away. Like blown away.
Sure. I'm going to ask this last question about about your time in Iraq.
Yeah.
How, now that it's been a year has gone by since, how did this trip change you?
Hmm. On a day-to-day basis, I think, more than anything, it it changed me by giving me perspective of what it actually it really means to be, um a citizen in a country. And I know we have our ish, and I know that we have like our stuff that we work through, but like to be a woman in the modern world, or like I guess I should say Western world, versus being a woman where like over there, and to have hope, and to have a voice, and to be able to be independent. And because there was like a whole other like social dynamic,
Mhm.
and like cultural difference that I witnessed. It makes me very thankful for the freedom that I have, um as an American woman.
How did it change you as a Christian?
Oh, um
It had to have. I
Um,
can't put words in your mouth, but
I know.
did it strengthen your faith?
It did. And I think a lot of it was just by, you know, people's testimonies over there. Like, I don't know anything. I don't know the first thing what it means to um, you know, be what's the word I'm looking for? It's very easy to be a Christian in America. Very easy. And so I don't really know,
To be oppressed.
yeah. Or like, what does it look like to sacrifice something to be a Christian?
Uh-huh.
Um, we have it very easy here, and we live a life of luxury, and I don't know. They know what it costs.
Mm,
They know what it means to like pick up their cross and bear it, and
mhm,
like, and they love Jesus so much that it's worth it to them.
mhm,
And for me, I think like that was the most inspiring piece of it, because especially like it's illegal to convert religions over there. So if you grow up Muslim, like you're not legally able to convert over to Christian, like to become a Christian. And so many of them, go against their family's wishes, or um like they bring dishonor on their family if they convert. and
mhm.
and that to me, like, that's unfathomable.
Yeah, it's a level of faith that I don't think anybody can truly wrap their brain around unless you've lived it, I guess.
Right,
Yeah.
right. um,
Well, I mean, we could talk for hours.
I mean, we could.
And I wanted, I mean, this was the whole reason. Besides, I enjoy talking to you, of course, but it was I mean, the real reason I wanted to have you on was just that you could tell a little bit of this story. And you
Absolutely.
can, for those listeners out there, you can look at it from the faith perspective of this story or just from the human perspective of this story,
Mhm.
regardless of your faith background. Um, I can't tell you enough how scared I was for you when I knew you were going to go, and I thought about you for those however many days that you were gone. I thought about you every day, hoping that
Mhm.
everything was going well and you were safe. And I was so
Well,
happy to hear when you were home, and really happy to get to see you again. And we had a great conversation when you were back the first time. But it's a story that I think often of, just some of these short little blurbs that you've told me about this trip. And
mhm.
I wanted all of our listeners to hear this too a little bit. So I really thank you for sharing all that, Marlo.
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking. I really do enjoy sharing. It takes a different type of effort.
I believe that. Well, we close every episode out with 10 questions that I ask all of my guests, and this will be nowhere near as deep as what we just got done talking about. So we'll end on a lighter note. Are you
Love
ready?
that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Question number 1. What is your morning drink of choice?
Coffee.
How do you take your coffee?
Black, for sure.
Good. There we go. Question number 2. Who is a go-to musical artist or group for you?
Uh, there it's a group called Penny and Sparrow.
Okay.
Let's see.
What kind of music do they do?
like like folky, bluegrassy acoustic vibe.
Why haven't you told me about these guys before? It sounds like it's right up my alley.
I
Penny
honestly,
and Sparrow. Okay.
Penny and Sparrow. I'll send them to you.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
You
Uh,
would love their lyrics. They're deep. Sorry.
okay, cool. Question number 3. What movie can you watch over and over again?
Pride and Prejudice.
Ugh,
Hand.
okay. Yeah.
Oh my
No, no,
gosh.
yeah, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Question number 4. What's the last thing that you read?
Um, Emma by Jane Austen.
Wow, you're going on all the classics here tonight. How about that?
Jane Austen's my girl.
There you go. There you go. Number 5, what's your favorite pizza topping?
Uh, okay, there's this pistachio pizza
What?
from yeah.
There in Charlotte?
Yes.
Please explain it to me. I'm sure some of our listeners are curious too.
Oh, it's like basil base with I think it's like mozzarella or ricotta cheese.
So it's like a pesto sauce instead of a red sauce.
Yes.
And then crushed pistachios.
Yes, with ricotta cheese, and it's divine.
That does sound really, really good.
Well, if you ever come down here,
Sounds good.
I'll
Yeah,
get you
yeah,
upset.
yeah. Well, I love pizza and I love pistachios and I like basil and pesto.
Oh,
So it's got everything going for it.
maybe you can make it at home too.
Yeah, I could try. Yeah, definitely. That sounds really good. I
Mhm.
think I know the answer to this one, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Number 6, laying on the beach or going for a hike?
This is so hard. Can I
Really?
beach after a hike? Okay.
I
Um,
Sure.
lit. I beach.
I would have pegged you for the beach right off the bat.
It is beach. It's beach. Truly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beach.
All right, 7. You have invited me over for dinner. What are you cooking?
Oh gosh. Oh, can we get takeout?
Sure, yeah. What are we getting?
Okay. Okay. Actually though, how do you feel about Indian?
I'm a
Like
huge Indian fan.
curry?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we could either get really good takeout of that or um like tiki masala
Yeah, yeah.
vibes or have you ever heard of dal?
Well,
Like
of course. Yeah, sure. It's
okay, yeah.
delicious.
I can
Yeah.
actually make that.
Oh,
I'm not
well,
terrible at it.
there we
I've
go.
tried it enough, so I'll make you that.
Okay, so that sounds good. I'll bring the naan. Okay.
Oh,
Oh
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, number 8. What is a dream vacation destination of yours?
Turkey. Maybe not
Mm.
now in the political climate, but you know.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, I'd really like to see Istanbul myself someday.
Golly.
Um,
Yeah,
just from what I've seen pictures and video was. Yeah. All
truly.
right, number 9. What is something that you're afraid of?
Mm. Like on a funny note or
Well, it
like a
could be either way, whatever you want.
wow. Well, rejection obviously, but I think that's a fear that, we probably all deal with. But on a lighter note, I would say cockroaches.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, last question. What job other than one that you've already had would you love to have?
Hmm. Maybe I feel like being a florist would be really fun.
I think that would be minus interacting maybe with angry customers. I think that would be
Ooh,
very relaxing
yeah.
as a job. I think it would.
Yeah, and like you're surrounded by beautiful flowers
Yeah,
all
yeah, right, right, right. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. That's a good answer. Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Marlo, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. What a great conversation! I could hear your stories from that Iraq trip for hours on end. Maybe at Christmas time when we get to meet up again, we'll have to revisit some of this stuff. But
Yeah.
thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with all of the listeners.
Thank you, Doug. Honestly, it means a lot.
You bet. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow along at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just look for @Doug's Front Porch. And please feel free to tell all your friends about the show. And I'll see you all next time on my front porch.